We start by getting back to basics in the fight against the coronavirus in Japan. Stricter measures are returning to Tokyo as a surge in new cases follows the lifting of a state of emergency last month.
From the viewpoint of crisis management, we have asked the central government to designate Tokyo as an area where strict measures should be taken.
The Prime Minister responded on Thursday evening and suggested a final decision will come Friday.
We have decided to ask an expert advisory panel to discuss the request from the Tokyo government tomorrow.
Health authorities confirmed 545 new infections in the capital on Thursday. This is the first time the daily tally has topped 500 for 2 days in a row since the state of emergency was lifted. Officials now plan to urge bars and restaurants in certain areas to close earlier. They're also asking residents to refrain from unnecessary travel outside the prefecture. Experts monitoring the situation here in Tokyo are concerned about a more infectious variant. They say about a third of 158 positive samples taken recently had N501Y mutations. The strain was first detected in the UK and had spread mainly in western Japan.
The ratio of N501Y has sharply increased over the past week. I believe the variant is currently a bigger threat.
The western prefecture of Osaka, its neighbor Hyogo, and Miyagi prefecture in the northeast started more stringent antivirus measures on Monday. Officials in Osaka reported 905 cases on Thursday, the third consecutive day a record was reached. More than 70% of hospital beds for serious COVID-19 patients there are occupied.
We need to curb the number of infections as much as possible to ease the strain on the medical system.
Governors in Kyoto and Okinawa are also planning to seek the same designation. The Prime Minister says the government will work closely with local officials and consider where stricter measures are needed. Across Japan, more than 3,400 coronavirus cases were reported on Thursday. And while the world works to curb the spread, Japan is preparing to roll out inoculations for the elderly starting next Monday. Researchers have begun a study measuring the effectiveness of a vaccine targeted against variants. A team at Yokohama City University is looking at the efficacy of a vaccine that's currently being administered in the country. The researchers have collected blood samples from 100 people who've received the vaccine. They'll study the function of antibodies that neutralize the coronavirus using new techniques they've developed. The team says the results will be available within 3 hours.
The effectiveness of a vaccine will need to be assessed in a timely manner, as the coronavirus can change at amazing speed. This study makes it possible to evaluate the effectiveness of a vaccine against variants of the virus.
The researchers plan to look at the vaccine's success against several variants spreading in Britain, South Africa, Brazil, and Japan. The team says if a new variant is detected, it'll be added to the list. Now, Kyoto University Hospital says its doctors have carried out the world's first living donor lung transplant involving a COVID-19 patient. The hospital says the patient developed pneumonia after contracting the coronavirus late last year. She overcame the virus, but the pneumonia irreparably damaged her lungs. The living donors were the patient's husband and son. Surgeons transplanted lung lobes from them into the woman. The hospital says she's recovering in the ICU after the nearly 11-hour surgery.
For patients who have serious lung disorders due to the after effects of the new coronavirus, living donor lung transplants can be a promising treatment.
The doctor says the patient is expected to make a full recovery in 3 months. The Myanmar military has reportedly used machine guns against people protesting the coup. A local human rights group says the crackdown has left nearly 600 people dead since the military takeover on February 1st. People continue to take to the streets across the nation to protest the junta. The military on Wednesday reportedly attacked demonstrators with automatic weapons and grenades in the northwestern town of Calais. Local media say at least 13 people died that day across the country. Separately, Myanmar's ambassador to the UK says he was locked out of his embassy in London. He's been calling for the release of detained leaders, including Aung San Suu Kyi. The ambassador said through a spokesperson the embassy had been seized by the military attaché.
We have full faith in the UK government not to recognize the military council of Myanmar. We believe the UK government would not back those who are working for the military junta.
On Tuesday, a body of ousted lawmakers, including members of Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, released a statement. It claimed it had collected 180,000 pieces of evidence that show wide-scale abuses of human rights by the military, such as the use of lethal force, arrests, and torture. Moving now to the latest in the ongoing fight over the future of Hong Kong. A prominent pro-democracy activist from the territory says he's been granted political asylum in Britain. Nathan Law was one of the leaders of the 2014 Umbrella Movement, in which young people called for democratic elections in Hong Kong. He fled to Britain last year after China imposed a national security law on Hong Kong. 1 month later, he was reportedly put on a wanted list by police, suspected of violating the law. He continues to urge the international community to support the pro-democracy movement and address the human rights violations in China. In a tweet posted on Wednesday, Law said the Home Office had informed him his asylum application was approved. He added the fact he was wanted under the national security law shows he was exposed to severe political persecution and is unlikely to return to Hong Kong without risk. The British government introduced a new visa system in January that accepts applications by Hong Kong residents who hold British national overseas status. The government estimates about 300,000 Hong Kong residents could emigrate over the next 5 years. Beijing has accused Britain of gross interference in what it sees as internal affairs with Hong Kong. South Korean President Moon Jae-in has reacted to his party's defeat in mayoral by-elections in 2 key cities. He says he takes it as a reprimand from the public. Mayoral by-elections were held Wednesday in Seoul and Busan. They were seen as a bellwether for a presidential election next year. Candidates from the governing Democratic Party were overwhelmingly defeated by rivals from the main opposition force, the People Power Party. Moon released a statement saying he sees the losses as a reprimand from the public. He said he'll carry out his duties with more humility and a heavier sense of responsibility. The Democratic Party said senior members will resign to take responsibility for the losses. Kim Jong-un is interim leader of the People Power Party. He said the election results reflect public anger toward Moon's administration, and he said they'll provide the basis for a change of government. The People Power Party had suffered a series of losses, including a poor showing in a general election last April. It appears to be building momentum for the presidential election, but has yet to find a strong candidate. In other news, major Japanese convenience store chain Lawson says it plans to increase its outlets in China to 10,000 in 5 years. That's triple the number of stores there now.
China is a gigantic market compared to Japan. Operating 10,000 outlets there will be just a stepping stone.
The coronavirus pandemic has prompted more people in China to use convenience stores to buy food or daily necessities. Lawson says it plans to open new stores not just in major cities, but also in rural areas. The boyfriend of Japan's Princess Mako is trying to set the record straight about financial problems involving his mother. In 2018, the media reported on those problems. The boyfriend's engagement to the princess was later postponed. The Imperial Household Agency announced in 2017 Princess Mako was getting engaged to her college sweetheart, Komuro Kei. Then weekly magazines and other media reported his mother was in financial trouble with her former fiancé. Now, Komuro has issued a statement describing events that began after his mother and her fiancé broke up. The man had been helping Komuro's mother financially. According to Komuro, he said he did not want the money back. Komuro says the man sent a letter nearly a year later demanding repayment and that his mother declined. He says years then passed with no contact and that his mother inferred the matter was closed. He says the two sides communicated after the media reports came out, but that they haven't spoken since because the man said he no longer wanted the money. Komuro says there's been no change in his or Princess Mako's feelings, and they still feel the same about getting married. Komuro notes Princess Mako's father, Crown Prince Akishino, said in November Komuro should make all the facts clear if he and the princess were to get married. Also in November, the Crown Prince gave his blessing for the marriage. The head of the Imperial Household Agency says Komuro's statement helped him understand the facts. As to whether Komuro will win public understanding, he said that would be up to individuals. Next in world weather, a deadly tropical cyclone that wreaked havoc in Indonesia is now approaching Australia. Our meteorologist John Thuno has the outlook for the region and elsewhere in our world weather report.
Hello, rain continues to be a big part of the story across Indonesia, especially eastern areas where it's been particularly hit hard by a storm earlier this week. Here's a look at some of the video to give you an idea of the aftermath as numerous villages on a remote island of Indonesia were affected by landslides. Heavy rain caused solidified lava from an eruption in November to tumble down the slopes of a volcano. At least 67 people have been killed due to Sunday's incident, and a local resident said that flash floods also occurred with a thundering sound. Landslides and floods from torrential rains have killed at least 160 people in Indonesia and East Timor. Thousands of houses have been damaged and many people have been displaced. And for those who have been displaced by this particular situation, not getting much in terms of relief because more rain is in the forecast, still bringing the possibility of even more landslides as we go forward throughout the next few days. Meanwhile, that same tropical cyclone is a Category 1 storm and paralleling the coast of Australia as we go throughout the week and likely to become a Category 3 storm by Saturday. And for those of you along the coastal areas, need to keep an eye out on this storm because it is headed in your general direction. Maybe talking about possible impacts, especially direct impacts as we go into Sunday and Monday. Across Japan, it's been a relatively calm day, but then late on Thursday evening, we had some storms that popped up across the Kanto area in the eastern side of Japan near Tokyo. Some areas reporting some hail in the process. That system will be moving away, and we're looking at another one up north, continuing to bring the chance for some snow into northern portions of Japan. Sapporo looking at some snow. Tokyo, Osaka, and Fukuoka looking at mid to upper teens as we go through the day on Friday. Keeping an eye on what's happening across the eastern areas of the United States, a low-pressure system likely to fire off more strong to severe thunderstorms as we head toward Friday, so be on the lookout for that. That's a look at your forecast. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
In Ethiopia, the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says COVID-19 vaccines are safe. He urged African countries to fight misinformation. Mozambique calls for international support after a deadly attack in Palma. Officials blame the Islamic State group for the violence. Officials in Bosnia-Herzegovina say coronavirus infections are rising in migrant and refugee camps as it struggles with high COVID-19 rates. And in Israel, citizens stood silent as sirens sounded for 2 minutes to remember victims of the Holocaust.
Joe Biden has unveiled his first gun control measures since taking office following a number of mass shootings. He said gun violence in America was an epidemic and an international embarrassment. On day 9 of the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer filmed kneeling on George Floyd's neck, a lung expert told the court that George Floyd died after officers held him down like a vice. Police say rioting in Belfast on Wednesday night was on a scale not seen in Northern Ireland for years. The Northern Ireland Assembly has called for an immediate end to the violence. And the World Health Organization has warned that any loss of trust in the AstraZeneca vaccine would be a huge blow to the fight against coronavirus. It says the vaccine remains safe despite a link to extremely rare blood clots.